Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with number 9 in the series. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, from Ruy Lopez to Magnus Carlsen. In this series we're looking at the strongest players in the history of chess, not only the official world champions, but also the strongest players of their era. And we started by looking at the first strongest player of his era, Ruy Lopez de Segura, who was the best player on the planet between 1560 and 1575. He was followed up by Leonardo da Cutri, Paolo Boy, Alessandro Salvio, Gioacchino Greco. Then the power of chess moved from Spain and Italy to France, and we had Légal de Kermeur, and we had François-André Danican Philidor, Alexandre Deschapelles, and Louis-Charles Mahé de la Bourdonnais. Then Howard Staunton from England was the strongest player, and then Adolf Anderssen. This video is about the great Paul Morphy, who was the 12th strongest player in the history of the game. After that we'll look at the official world champions: Steinitz, Lasker, Capablanca, Aljochin, Euwe, Botvinnik, Smyslov, Tal, Petrosyan, Spassky, Bobby Fischer, Karpov-Kasparov, Kramnik, Anand, and the current world champion Magnus Carlsen. I did make a series on the 100 days countdown towards the Carlsen-Karl World Championship match. The link to that series is in the description box of this video, and there you can find games of all these 16 great players, because that series covers all the 46 matches that were played for the official World Championship. But as said, in this video we're going to look at Paul Morphy. Born in 1837, died in 1884, he was the greatest chess master of his time, even though his career only lasted 2 years. He was born in the USA in New Orleans in a wealthy and distinguished family. His father was a lawyer and became a judge later in life. His mother was the musically talented daughter of prominent French parents. No one taught Paul how to play chess. He learned by watching his father and uncle play. After watching one of these games, young Paul surprised them by stating that his uncle could have won. They had not realized that Paul knew the rules. They were even more surprised when Paul proved his claim by repositioning the pieces and demonstrating the win his uncle had missed. When Paul was 12 years old, he was by far the strongest player in New Orleans. He bought chess books, but when reading them, found out that he had already discovered everything by himself. A natural talent he was. Morphy only played one tournament in his life, in New York in 1857. He won with a 5-point margin over his nearest rival. In 1858 he travelled to London and Paris, where the strongest chess players lived. He beat everybody and played a match in Paris against Adolf Anderssen, which is considered the first unofficial match for the World Championship. Morphy won 8 points to 3. He also played 8 games simultaneously without seeing board and pieces. A Parisian newspaper wrote, "Morphy is bigger than Caesar. He came, he did not see, and he conquered." In 1859, Morphy returned to America, where he tried to set up a lawyer practice. He found out that nobody took a chess-playing lawyer seriously. He fell in love, but the young lady did not want to get married to a chess player. He stopped playing chess, even started to hate it. We see some resemblance with Bobby Fischer here. His final years were tragic. Suffering from depression and paranoia, he spent his days wandering through New Orleans while conversing with imaginary voices. On the afternoon of July 10th, 1884, Paul Morphy was found dead in his bathtub at the age of 47. According to the autopsy, he had suffered a stroke brought on by entering cold water after a long walk in the midday heat. By that time, the world that had cheered him on at the peak of his chess career had long forgotten him. The game I will show you is the famous opera game, which Morphy played against the German noble Karl II, Duke of Brunswick, and the French aristocrat Comte Isouard de Vauvenargues. It was played in the Opera House in Paris, where the Count had a private box. Morphy was invited by the Count and loved opera, but ended up having to play chess against his host, sitting with his back to the stage. And that's why this game is called the Opera Game, one of the most famous games ever played in the history of chess. It was the 21st of October 1858 and Morphy opened e4, and his opponents answered with e5, knight f3, d6. They played the Philidor defense, named after the 7th strongest player of his time, François-André Danican Philidor. d4 from Morphy, and now e takes d4 is the move that is played exclusively nowadays. And then knight takes d4, knight f6 and knight c3. But in 1858, bishop g4 was played by the two players, the two opponents of Morphy. And now we know that this is not such a good move. Morphy took on e5, and you have to be careful. If you take back on e5, then there is queen takes d8 check, king takes, and white wins a pawn. And that's why black took on f3. Morphy took back with the queen, and the count and his friend now took back on e5, winning back the pawn. Bishop c4 from Morphy. White has a lead in development, and also a mate in one threat. Queen takes f7 is checkmate if black is not careful. Queen f6 here is the best move, but knight f6 was played by the count. Looks logical, develops a piece and stops the checkmate threat. But now there is queen b3, and Morphy played it with a double attack. f7 and b7 are now hanging. What to do? Queen d7 to protect f7 is not a good move, because then white takes on b7 and wins the rook in the corner, because queen c6 is not possible because of bishop b5. Nice move. Pinning the queen and winning the queen. So what to do after queen b3? The count played queen e7. And now knight c3 from Morphy. He could have taken on b7, but he develops another piece instead. c6. Now b7 is protected. And bishop g5. Developing another piece and pinning the knight. b5 from black. And if white now has to retreat the bishop, then black is doing fine. But Morphy finds the best move in this position. A nice piece sacrifice. Knight takes b5, exclamation mark. C takes b5, and it looks for a moment you can play bishop d5. This knight is pinned, so cannot take the bishop, and the rook is hanging in the corner. But then there is queen b4 check, on pinning the knight. And black is better here. He doesn't lose that rook on a8. It will be taken by the knights. So after c takes b5, Morphy did not play bishop d5. He took on b5 with check. He has 2 pawns for the piece and a very big advantage in development. Knight bd7 from the count and the duke, and Morphy castled queenside, bringing another piece into the attack. Rook d8. We've only played 12 moves. Black's king is stuck in the middle. Both his knights are pinned, and he cannot develop his kingside pieces. It's very hard to see how these two pieces will ever get into the game. Morphy finds a power move to decide the game. Rook takes d7. Very strong. After rook takes, the other rook comes to d1. Black has an extra rook, but that piece stands on h8 and is looking on from afar. Queen e6 was played by black, unpinning this knight and attempting to swap the queens. But Morphy finishes the game with bishop takes d7 check. And after knight takes, there is a mate in 2. If you have not seen the opera game before, it may be nice to look for this mate in 2 yourself. It's very elegant. Queen b8 check wins the game on the spot. An elegant queen sacrifice to deflect the knight. Knight takes b8 is the only move, and after rook d8, the game was over. This is checkmate. Only 17 moves, and as I said, one of the most famous games in the history of chess. If you have never seen it before, then this is a big moment in your chess life, and if you had seen it before, I hope you enjoyed seeing it again. And I hope you enjoyed this video on Paul Morphy, the pride and sorrow of chess. If you did like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. It would be great if you liked the video that you would share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.